single day.
Hi students, how are you all of you? I hope everybody is doing well. And today we can continue about the homeostasis. We have seen in the previous class about the homeostasis, the definition for the word homeostasis, and we have discussed the importance of the skin, how the skin plays major role in maintaining the constant body temperature, right? So the first we have seen the maintenance of constant body temperature, and next we are going to see about how the cooling down the body means when the temperature is increased, the body temperature comes down to maintain the constant body temperature such as 37 degrees C, right? So how does we cool the body now? When the body is overheated, the body takes several actions to stop it by trying to lose heat in several ways. Okay, so if the body is overheated, when we are in a hot sunlight, the body gets more heat, and when we do vigorous exercise and other time, the metabolic reaction, due to the metabolic reaction, more heat is released in the body and the temperature will become very high. So now this time the body is undergo for several steps or several functions to maintain or return back the body to the normal body temperature. Let's see now. First one is the vasodilation. So what does it mean, vasodilation? This action causes the body to lose heat quickly. Okay, it involves widening the lumen of the blood vessels of the skin. This increases the blood flow and rate of heat loss. These vessels are also brought near the surface of the skin to reduce the distance heat has to travel to escape. So vasodilation, okay, vasodilation, vasoconstriction, there are two processes. Dilation means what we can say, the size of the lumen becomes a big size or increases. It means that it becomes a big size, so the blood vessels, blood capillaries, and more quantity of blood can flow easily. And the vessels are also brought near the surface of the skin, and it is very close to the surface of the skin when the heat is increased to reduce the distance. The heat has to travel to escape. If that blood capillary is very deep in the skin, the distance between the top skin and the capillary will become more, so the heat loss will be taken place very late. So the time what happens, the blood capillaries come close to the skin and can easily the heat escape from the skin. Okay, so vasodilation is the first process in which the blood capillaries, the lumen means the inside. Okay, the hollow place is there in the capillary, we can call it as a lumen. The size of the lumen or size of the blood capillary increases, so more blood can flow inside that time when the body heat is increased, so that it comes close to this skin and the heat can escape from the body. Okay, and number two we will see sweating. Sweating is an important part. When we get heat, when our body gets heat, the more sweating will come. That you know everything, right, everybody? So sweat glands near the skin begin to secrete sweat on the surface of the skin through the pores. This sweat acts as a heat consumer to absorb the body heat and use it at evaporation. The activity of sweat gland is increased when the temperature of the body rises. So this sweating also secreted to maintain the constant body temperature. Okay, to maintain the constant body temperature, when the heat increases only the sweat will come. Why? It comes and evaporates through the skin, so the body gets cooled down. Okay, so sweating is the second important process to cooling down the body when the temperature increases in our body. And next you see the third one, hairs lie flat. So what does mean hairs lie flat? Means what? The muscles erectors of the hairs relax, making the hairs lay flat of the skin. When the hairs are erect, they trap air in gaps between them. This acts as an insulation and prevents heat loss. So, but when the hairs are flat, less air is trapped between them. So, there's no insulation and more heat can be lost. Okay, so this is the main thing. When the hair is erected, what will happen? They trap air in between the space between the hairs, right? There are space between the hairs if it is erect. So this acts as an insulation and prevents heat loss. But when the hairs are flat, all the hairs are flat, what will happen? The less air is trapped between them, so there is no insulation and more heat can be lost easily. This is also one way hairs lie flat. So you can see here the structure of the skin. Okay, already we have seen the hair is the flat hair, you can see here. Okay, so muscle erectors relax so that the hairs lie flat on the skin to reduce insulation. Sweat glands are there, it secretes sweats outside. Vasodilation makes the blood vessels wide so that more blood can pass through. Okay, now from this picture you can understand very clearly. So heating up the body. When the body temperatures drop, okay, now this much time we have seen when the temperature increased, how the body is maintaining the constant temperature or cooling down the body. So now the body gets cooling down. How can the temperature increase in the body? When the body temperatures drop, the body takes several actions to regulate the temperature by insulation to prevent heat loss and producing heat energy. So the first process is the vasoconstriction. So earlier we have seen the vasodilation. This is vasoconstrict. Constrict means what? It becomes narrow. Okay, it becomes narrow, the blood vessels. This causes the blood vessels to become narrower to reduce heat loss. They also sink deep into the skin to increase the distance heat loss to travel to escape, thus reducing heat loss. Okay, so that what happens, there are two processes happening. Blood vessels becomes very narrower, so less blood can go through and less heat loss, and they also sink very deeply in the skin so that the distance between the skin and blood vessels will become more, so the heat loss also will be very less or reducing the heat loss. Okay, so this is a vasoconstriction. You can see this causes the blood vessels to become narrower to reduce the heat loss. They also sink deep into the skin to decrease the distance, the heat loss, to travel to escape this, thus reducing heat loss. Okay. And next one you see the shivering. Okay. Next one is the shivering. When we get low temperature, our body gets shivering, right? So the muscles in the limbs start to contract and relax rapidly, thus increasing the rate of respiration and the amount of heat released by it. So shivering is generally happened. This is mainly contraction and a relaxation of our limbs, our hands, our legs, we can say limbs. Okay, and thus rapidly, and thus increasing the rate of respiration and amount of heat energy released by it. Okay. Yeah. So hairs become erect. Now hairs became flat in the high temperature, but low temperature has become erect, so that muscle erectors contract and make the hairs erect and stand up vertically, trapping air in the gaps between them. So this acts as an insulation to reduce the heat loss. Just opposite what we have given a definition for the cooling of the body. Just opposite definition, raising the temperature to the body. That's all. Okay. So do you understand? The first process is the constriction, vasoconstriction, and second one is the shivering, and the third one is the hair becomes erect. So muscle erectors contract and they make the hairs erect and stand up vertically, trapping air in the gaps between them. This acts as insulation to reduce heat loss. Okay. So you can see the picture here. There, the first picture we have seen, the hair becomes flattened. Here, the muscle erectors contract, so the hairs are erected. So hair becomes erect and stand vertically, tripping air in the gaps. So vasoconstriction makes the blood vessels narrower. So blood vessels, you can see here, it becomes very narrow. So less quantity of blood can flow through, and the distance between the skin and the top skin and the capillaries also very far. It sinks very deeply in the skin, and then heat loss will be reduced. Okay. So how the body senses changes in the environment. Okay. So how the body detects the changes in the environment, when the temperature is increasing out of the body or decreasing out of the body. So when the body's internal temperature changes, temperature of the blood changes with it. When the blood flows through the brain, a part of it called the hypothalamus detects a drop or rise or temperature. So temperature changes outside the body is mainly the changes of flow in the blood also. Okay. So internal temperature changes, the temperature of the blood changes with it. So temperature of the blood also first changes. When the blood flows through the brain to the part of the brain, hypothalamus, it detects the drop or rise in temperature. So the temperature variation, the hypothalamus, the part of the brain, can be detected easily. So the brain then starts sending electrical impulses to rest of the body, so that it works on heating or cooling itself. Okay. So hypothalamus is an important part in the brain which detects the temperature variation outside, either increased or decreased, and according to that it sends some impulse to the particular organ, hair, skin, or whatever it may be, to maintain the body temperature, either decreasing, cooling down the body, or raising the body temperature. Okay. So this process is called negative feedback. Okay, so negative feedback mechanism means find out the temperature variation and bringing back the temperature to the constant level. If it is increased, the temperature should be decreased inside the body to maintain a constant body temperature. If the temperature falls down, the body temperature should be increased to maintain the constant body temperature, 37 degrees C. Okay, so negative feedback is not for change in temperature only, though it's for any change in the internal temperature, including the blood glucose level. So whatever may be, negative feedback mechanism means it brings back to the constant level or internal environment inside the body. We can call it as a negative feedback. Don't forget. Okay. So regulating blood glucose level. How? Now first we have seen the temperature regulation. Now maintaining the glucose level. So for blood glucose level, however, the pancreas is an organ which monitors its level of, not the hypothalamus. When the blood flows through the pancreas detects the level of a glucose in it. If it is higher than normal, the pancreas secretes a hormone called insulin. So insulin is a hormone which is playing major role to control the level of glucose in the blood. So if the blood changes, if the glucose level changes, the blood, when the blood flows in the pancreas, it can find the pancreas whether blood glucose level increase or decrease. So if the blood glucose level increase immediately, it releases insulin. Or normal, it is higher than normal, the level of the glucose in the blood. When it flows through the pancreas secretes the hormone insulin. So insulin flows in the blood till it reaches, called insulin. So insulin flows in the blood till it reaches the liver. So when it reaches the liver, insulin hormone will make it to convert excess glucose into the blood into glycogen and store it in the liver cells. Okay? Do you understand? The glucose is now converted into glycogen and stored in the liver. So pancreas is secreting insulin. The insulin is traveled through the blood and reaches the liver. In the liver, it converts the glucose into glycogen, and that excess glycogen is stored in the liver itself. Okay, when the blood glucose level becomes normal, the pancreas will stop secreting insulin so that the liver stops converting glucose. So if it is normal, what happens? The secretion of insulin will be stopped. So the liver can release glucose, they can produce the glucose easily. So if the blood glucose level decreases below normal, the pancreas secretes another hormone called glucagon. When glucagon reaches the liver, it makes the liver convert the glycogen it made from excess glucose back into glucose and secrete it into the bloodstream so that the blood glucose level goes back to normal. So if the glucose level becomes low, the pancreas again secreting the hormone, another hormone, glucagon. This glucagon is changing this glycogen into glucose and sent to the bloodstream. So it comes to the normal level. Okay, so when this happens, the pancreas stops secreting glucagon. So when this happens, the pancreas again stopping secreting glucagon. So the pancreas secreting two different types of hormone. One is the insulin, another one is the glucagon. Insulin converts glucose into glycogen, and glucagon converts glycogen into glucose. Okay, don't forget. Okay, students, so the normal blood glucose level in the body 80 to 100 milligram per 100 centimeter cube. So you know the sugar patient, we are saying diabetics, right? So diabetics means it goes 100 above and 120 and above means we can call them as a diabetics. Sugar patient, they should reduce the level of glucose content in their body. Okay, students, so this is maintaining the constant glucose level in the body. There are two items we have studied in this lesson. First, temperature maintenance, and another one is glucose maintenance. Okay, that's all. And to start the next topic in this lesson, coordination response, is nerve cells. Okay, the nerve cells are the nerves. Okay, the fundamental unit of the nervous system is the nerves. That is called nerve cell. Other name is neuron. Neuron means nerve cell. Don't forget it at any time. So these neurons are of three types. Generally, we can see in this in our body. The first type is called as the motor neuron. Second one is the sensory neuron, and the third one is the relay neuron. Okay, sensory neuron, motor neuron, and relay neuron. There are three types of neuron. You don't forget at any time. We can start first about the neuron. What is neurons? So neurons are one of the most important structures of the nervous system. So neurons act as a wire that transmits electrical impulses all over the body. Like a cable that consists of many wires, a bundle of neurons is called a nerve. There are three types of neurons. Each type is to transmit electrical impulses from a specific place to another. You understand now clearly? The neurons are one of the most important structures of the nervous system. Neurons are like a wire. The cable is there. There are a lot of cables are joined together making one wire. Like that, many neurons are joined together forming one nerve. Okay, one nerve is formed because of many neurons. So like a cable that consists of many wires, a bundle of neurons is called nerve. There are three types of neurons I told you: motor neuron, sensory neuron, and then the relay neuron. Each type is to transmit electrical. The main function of this neuron is it transmits electrical impulses from a specific place to another place, one place to another place. That is the function of this neuron. Okay. Let us see first the motor neuron. You can see these neuron structure. You can see very clearly, right? So this is a neuron that transmits electrical impulses from the central nervous system to the effectors. Okay. So from the brain or central nervous system, the impulses taken to the effectors or the glands, right? Muscles or glands, effector. This is mainly done by motor neurons. So the function of the motor neuron, you don't forget, it takes or transmits impulses from the brain, or you can say central nervous system. No problem. Brain also okay. From the brain to the effectors is called as this is called motor neuron. Okay, so you can see the structure of the motor neuron. The top side you can see the cell body is there. Inside the cell body, nucleus is present, and you can see the cell surface membrane. It is an animal cell, so only surface membrane, cell membrane is present, cell wall is absent, right? And the synapse with another neuron, that we can see. Synapse means junction, joining with another neuron. One neuron joined with another neuron, like that it will go. So inside the cell you can see clearly the cytoplasm, and dendrites are present in the outer layer. You can see it, we can call it as a dendrites. Okay, don't forget. And you can see the elongated part from the cell body called as the axon. The axon is covered by myelin sheath. Myelin sheath is the insulation. Okay, insulation it gives. In the wire you can see outside coating plastic is there, right? Inside that copper wire is there. So the copper wire we can see here the axon, and that plastic coat, we can say, the myelin sheath here, and motor end plate or joins with effector muscles. Okay, its effectors means muscles, it is there. So this is what we can say, the neuron, motor neuron. So motor neuron function, it transmits impulse from the central nervous system to the effectors. Okay, it contains a cell body, cell surface membrane, cytoplasm, dendrites, axons, myelin sheath, and motor end plate, nucleus, etc. Okay, so you can see very clearly this picture and how does it look like, that motor neuron. And let's see about the function. Another thing about this neuron is made up of three segments, right? The cell body, first one is the cell body, I told you, which is the shorter part of motor neuron and is in the central nervous system. Axon, which stretches out from the cell body all the way to the end of the neuron, and the motor plate. Okay, so cell body, axon, motor plate. Cell body connects with the brain, and axon, it's a long nerves like structure, wire like structure, and motor end plate joins with the effector muscles. Okay, so you can see, once again I will show this picture. See this picture, cell body is here. I will just mark and show you. So you can see the cell body is the first part, and axon is the second part, and the end plate is the third part. Okay, we can divide this into three parts. Okay, this is part 1, this is part 2, this is part 3. This part 1 is go and join with the central nervous system, or we can call brain. Okay, and this part is conducting or transmitting electrical impulse, and this area, right, this area is giving effect or impulses, responses to these muscles. Okay, so this is what we can say. This motor neuron can be classified into three parts. The first part is the cell body, and the second part is the axon, third part is the motor end plate. Okay, don't forget at any time. So let's see the next. So neurons have features that are common between most animals, like a nucleus, cytoplasm, and cell surface membrane. Generally, many animals, many mammals are there. We are the mammal, and cows are mammal, elephants are mammal, tigers, cat, rat. So what we are going to sell the common features about all these neurons and among these mammals. Neurons have same features that are common between most animals, like nucleus is present in all the animals, okay, all the neuron. Cytoplasm is the common, cell surface membrane is common, but they also have some exclusive features like the axon. The axon is an extended cytoplasm that thread along with electrical impulses travel. Some motor neurons have axons of a length of 1 meter. Axons are coated by a layer of myelin sheath called myelin sheath. Okay, so in some organism we can see the axon's length, the length of the axons may be 1 meter, they are saying. It transmits the electrical impulse from the brain or from the central nervous system to the different parts, or not a different parts, effectors, we can say effectors. Okay, yeah. So it may vary from organism to organism, animal to animal. So this is an electricity insulating layer. Myelin sheath is there. It gives a firm insulation for the action as it transmits the electrical current. Okay, as it transmits the electrical current. And this is electrical insulating layer, which is essential for the proper functioning of the nervous system. Okay, students? Yeah, that's nice. Let's see the next. Another exclusive feature of neuron is the dendrites. Okay, axon we have seen, and the dendrites. Dendrites is the outer side, right? That around the what we can say, around the part of cell body, right? We have seen that one. Dendrites. These are several. So these are several short threads of cytoplasm coming out of the cell body. Their function is to pick up electrical impulse from the cells. Okay, so the electrical impulse comes to the dendrites. From the dendrites, it passes to the next neuron. Like that, it will go. So this is what we can say, the dendrites. So the last exclusive feature of motor neurons only is motor end plate. That part is the motor end plate. This is just the end of the axon, and which is in the muscle, and it passes the electrical impulses from the neuron to the muscle fibers. Okay, from the neuron to muscle, the responses is given, that is through this motor end plate, we can say. Okay, students. So next we are going to see about the second type, the sensory neurons. So like other neuron, like a motor neuron, sensory neurons carry electrical impulse. So sensory neurons also carry electrical impulses from one place to another, but sensory neurons carry electrical impulses in the direction different to that of motor neurons. From the receptor to CNS, okay, don't forget, and motor neuron we have seen, it carries impulses from the central nervous system to the effectors, but the sensory neuron from the sense organs or from the receptors to the CNS or to the brain. That is the main thing. The function you see, sensory neuron transmits impulse from the sense organs or receptors to the central nervous system. That's all. Okay, just opposite function. From the receptor to brain, from the brain to effectors. That's all. Okay. And you can see the structure of the sensory neuron here. The picture is given very clearly here, and you might have seen very clear difference between how does the motor neuron looks like and how does the sensory neuron looks like, right? You can see the cell body is located at the middle of this neuron, but we have seen at the end of the neuron the motor neuron, right? And here cell body is present, cell surface membrane present, and the nucleus, the cytoplasm, dendrites and axon. You see, dendrites we have seen at the outpush or outward of the growth of cytoplasm. We have seen the motor neuron, but the axon is the same here, and the central nervous system. The receptor is here. You see here, not motor end plate, and myelin sheath is also covered here. Okay, let's see one by one about the different functions of the different parts of this sensory neuron. Can you see these pictures? I think very clearly, right? Cell body, cell surface membrane, nucleus, cytoplasm, dendrite, axon, myelin sheath. Okay, this is the structure, how this differ from the motor neuron. You can see very clearly. Okay, the cell body here located at the middle of this neuron. So sensory neurons shape is unique. This is because it's made of a cell body with the two arms extending out of it. The first arm is the axon, which is other end is the center. Second arm is the dendrite. So left side is the you can see this picture very clearly. So left side is the axon is present. So you can see left side is axon and right side is dendrite is present, right? And other end is in CNS, and the second arm is the dendrite. So which is other end is in the receptor. The dendrite is similar in structure to the axon, except that it joins the receptor with the cell body. So the dendrite is similar in structure to the axon. Same structure. What is axon? How much axon size? That is the same dendrite, except that joins the receptor with the cell body. This one joins with the other neuron, right? This one is joins with the cell body. Okay. So the electrical impulse of the sensory neuron flow from the receptor through the dendrite to the cell body, then from the cell body to the central nervous system through the axon. Okay, so this is the function of this central nervous system. You can see very clearly about these things. Now we can see one more neuron that is called as relay neuron. How does it look like, relay neuron? Relay neurons are located in the central nervous system. Okay, and their job is to pass electrical impulse from the sensory neuron to the motor neuron. So it acts as a diversion. So what's the function of the relay neuron? It is located in the brain. The sensory neuron brings the information to the brain, and this information in the brain converts or transmits to the motor neuron by relay neuron. Okay, so it connects the sensory neuron with the motor neuron. It's like a bridge. Okay, so it bridges between this sensory neuron and the motor neuron. That's all. You can see the structure of this relay neuron, and the dendrites are present, cell body is present, axons present, synaptic. So this is the structure. You can see how does it look like, and how about the different structure of three different neurons found in our body. Okay, students, and next we will see. So where neurons meet, they are not actually touching each other. Instead, there's a gap called synapse or junction box. When the electrical impulse reaches the end of the neuron secretes a chemical transmitter which passes by diffusion to the other neuron, causing the impulse to carry from the neuron to the second. Okay, so actually neurons are not meeting one another exactly. Instead of that, there is some gap between one neuron and another neuron. That gap we can call as a synapse junction box. When the electrical impulse reaches the end of neuron, the neuron secretes a chemical transmitter. Chemical neurotransmitter we can say, okay, chemical transmitter. It's a chemical neurotransmitter chemical we can say, which passes by diffusion to the other neuron. Through this transmitter, by the process of diffusion, this impulse passes from one neuron to another neuron till reaching the brain. So this is the way. So synapse means what? It is a junction between the two neurons and are filled with a chemical neurotransmitter. Okay, students, now we have coordination and response. The new lesson is the reflex action. Okay, so we are going to see this topic, reflex action. And our previous class we have discussed different types of neurons. What are the different types of neurons? We have learned well 3 types of neurons: sensory neuron, motor neuron, and then relay neuron. And what are the functions and what are the structures of the neuron? Everything we have seen in the previous class, right? And now we can say about the next topic, reflex action. What is meant by reflex action? Okay, it's a response, a sudden response that is called as reflex action. Okay, so nervous system in action, that is we can call now when we touch the heat, what will happen? Immediately we will take our finger or hand from the hot object, right? So this is called reflex action. So let's see now. If your finger touches a hot surface, receptor cells in the skin of your finger detect a stimulus, which is a sudden rise in the temperature, right? When we touch very hot object, hot water or something, when you touch it, what happens? Immediately we take away our hand or finger from the object, because that sudden increased temperature, we cannot tolerate that. The receptor uses the energy of the stimulus to generate electrical impulses. Okay, the receptor uses the energy of the stimulus. The energy from this stimulus, it is used to generate the electrical impulse, so that the electrical impulse can pass through the neurons to reach the brain, okay, or central nervous system. These impulses are then carried by the axons of the dendrites of the sensory neuron, axons, dendrites of the sensory neuron, through cell body to axon, and from the axon to the CNS. CNS means central nervous system. Okay. So these impulses are then carried by the axons of the dendrites, of the sensory neuron through cell body to axon, from the axon to the central nervous system. Okay, and at the central nervous system, the electrical impulses travel through the synapse to the relay neuron, which passes it on to the motor neuron. We know very well about the functions of the relay neuron, right? So once again, I am just revising the functions of the 3 neurons. You just listen to me. Sensory neuron transmits impulse from sense organs or receptors, right? Receptors to the central nervous system, such as a brain and spinal cord. And motor neuron transmits impulse from the central nervous system, either brain or spinal cord, to the effectors. Effectors include 2 parts, I told you. muscles and glands. Okay, and relay neuron transmits the impulse from sensory neuron to the motor neuron in the brain. Okay, it is making as a common bridge between connecting the bridge between this central nervous system and the motor sensory neuron and motor neuron. Okay, yeah, now this is what we can say. At the central nervous system, you can see the electrical impulses travel through the synapse to the relay neuron, which passes it on to the motor neuron. Okay, this is the function of relay neuron. Next, let's see now. So the nerve impulses are transmitted through the axon of the motor neuron to the targeted muscle, which contracts when electrical impulses reach it, resulting in your finger being pulled away from the hot surface. How we are taking our fingers from the hot surface suddenly? Because the nerve impulses when reaches the central nervous system and it is transmitted through the axon of the motor neuron to the targeted targeted organ, that is muscle, so that which contracts immediately. Okay, that reply comes, it contracts immediately when electrical impulses reaches it, resulting in your finger being pulled away from the hot surface. You can understand, I think, clearly this sentence, right? And this pathway is called the reflex arc. Okay, this pathway is called as reflex arc and happens in about a fraction of a second. It will not take a long time to reach the brain, and the brain in the brain sensory neuron to motor neuron, from the motor neuron to the what we can say our body, our effector. It will not take a long hours. It will not take a long time, or it will not take hours and hours. Okay, it's just a fraction of a second it will happen. You just imagine when you touch the hot object, how fast we are taking away our fingers from that. That much fast the transmission takes place in the nervous system of a human being. So this pathway, we can say, this transmission pathway, we can call it as reflex arc. Okay, this pathway we can call reflex arc, and happens it in about a fraction of a second. Don't forget, that is very, very important. Okay, so what is a reflex arc? You have to write the nerve impulses are transmitted through the axon of the motor neuron to the targeted muscles, which contracts when electrical impulses reach it, resulting in your finger being pulled away from the hot surface. So this pathway is called reflex arc and happens in about a fraction of a second. Okay, don't forget. So let's see this picture. Now you can see the relay neuron. Where does it present? And reflex arc, you can see the central nervous system. It comes, see, when we are touching this hot object. Okay, so I'm just showing you now. So see, this is the first process happening. Okay, so what is actually happening? We are touching the hot object. Okay, so in the hand, temperature receptor is there. Okay, and stimulus takes place. So this is taken by the sensory neuron to the brain. Okay, when it reaches the brain, you can see here, it comes to the central nervous system, and relay neuron is here, and it comes to the motor neuron. You can see here, it again comes like that. Okay, it comes to the muscles. So it comes here, and we are taking away. This is the response. Okay, so this is the last part. Okay, so that you can see clearly in this picture about this relay neuron is present here. Okay, relay neuron is present here, and relay neuron converts message from this place to sensory neuron to motor neuron. Okay, so this is called, this picture you can see clearly, and this is we can call as reflex arc. Reflex action. What is meant by reflex action? A sudden change, that is called as reflex action. Okay, the sudden change for the response, we can call it as reflex. So reflex arc is the pathway of this all this process. We can call it as the reflex arc. Okay, students. Okay, let's see now the last one, the reflex arc, how it is happening. You see, reflex arc means what? First receptor receiving the stimulus, the hot object, right? And it comes to the sensory neuron, and from the sensory neuron transmits this stimulus to the central nervous system. In the central nervous system, relay neuron takes this impulse from sensory neuron to the motor neuron. So the motor neuron transmits the response to the effector muscle. Okay, so this is the reflex arc pathway, we can say. You can learn well these things, and this type of questions will ask in your MCQs also. So receptor to sensory neuron to central nervous system relay neuron, from relay neuron to motor neuron, and motor neuron to effector, the response reaches. This is, we can call it as a reflex arc. Okay, students, I think you can understand clearly. So don't forget control and coordination, voluntary action and involuntary action. We have studied about the reflex action, reflex arc in the previous class. I think you understand very well about the reflex action. Means the immediate, the response for the what we can say stimuli. Immediate response for the stimuli is the reflex action we have seen in the previous class. So in continue that we are going to see the voluntary and involuntary action. Okay, how does it happen in human nervous system? And the meaning you can understand very clearly. Voluntary and involuntary. Voluntary means autonomous, right? Automatically. And involuntary means it is something stimulated. Something should be stimulated and the action will be done. Okay, students, let's see now. So first, voluntary and involuntary action, I will give you just a definition for that one. You can see here, the reflex arc is a reflex action. Reflex means it is an automatically done without your choice, right? For an example, I will tell the heart is there in our body. The heart is beating since birth to the death. Is there any order are you giving to the heart to beat? No. And the respiration process, the inhale, exhale, the nose is doing the process. So these are all the fantastic example for the voluntary actions, involuntary actions, right? So voluntary action means we actually give the permission to do the work, that is called voluntary. Involuntary means it is automatically happens in our body. Okay, that is a reflex, we can say. Sometime you see that the heartbeat, respiration, all these are example for that. So the reflex arc is a reflex action, and reflex means it's automatically done without your choice. So yesterday we have seen one video about the reflex arc. The brain is not involving. Before the message goes to the brain, it is directly converted to the motor neuron from the relay neuron. So the message from the sensory neuron, it converts directly to the motor neuron by the relay neuron without sending the information to the brain to give order for the correct response for this stimuli, because this is what we can say the reflex action that we have studied in the previous class. Okay, so now you see this is because when the electrical impulse reaches the relay neuron in the CNS, central nervous system, from the receptors, some impulses are carried by other neurons to the brain, and some impulses are processed into the motor neuron to the effector muscle, and the response takes place. See the second point. Some impulses are processed onto the motor neuron directly without sending to the brain or central nervous system to give a response to that particular stimuli. For an example, when we touch the heat, when we touch the fire or some flame, okay, so we take our hand or fingers, immediately take away from the fire or the flame. So this is actually, when the body gets more heat, what will happen? We can't tolerate the heat. So this message actually, this electrical impulse of this stimuli directly goes to the sensory neuron, right? Go through the sensory neuron and reaches the brain, but it not enters the brain. The relay neuron converts this message stimuli to the motor neuron to give the response to that effectors. That's the meaning. Okay. So next you can see the electrical impulses going to your brain are much slower than the ones going to the effector muscle directly. So the electrical impulses, if it goes to the brain and it takes a long time, it's very much slower process than it connected directly to the motor neuron. Okay, and this is why the reflex action takes place before you realize it, and it's uncontrollable. That's what we can say. This is a reflex action, and a reflex action that takes place even without thinking it. So it happens a very, very, very fraction of seconds. Okay. So this is why the reflex action takes place before you realize it. Okay, before you realize it, it is uncontrollable. So reflex actions are said to be involuntary action. Don't forget at any time. Very first, I told you clearly, reflex actions are said to be involuntary actions. Do you understand? Involuntary action is the action and which is the brain is not giving any response for the particular stimuli. So automatically the stimuli or the electrical impulse convert or transmit into the motor neuron, and the motor neuron directly give the response to the effectors. Okay, that is involuntary action. Otherwise, we can call it as a reflex action. So involuntary actions start at the sense organ heading to the effector. They are extremely quick. So involuntary actions are very fastest action and a very quick action. Okay, and it starts at the sense organ heading to the effector. So it starts this electrical impulse or the stimuli receives from the receptor. The receptor cells are present in the sense organs, right? So it starts from the sense organ and the response will be given out in the effector. Okay, so they are extremely quick process. That's what. So they are extremely quick process. You can see that last point. Involuntary actions start at the sense organ heading to the effector, and they are extremely quick. Okay, students, I hope you understand well. So voluntary actions. So involuntary actions we have seen, and now we are going to see about the voluntary actions. Voluntary actions are the ones that you make the choice to do. Okay, so it's a choice given by one can decide, and the brain can send the message or the response to the particular stimuli. That is, we can call it as involuntary actions. It's like picking up a bag from the floor, for example. Okay, we can say the bag is there on the floor, your bag, school bag. So we're going to take the bag. So if you want to take the bag, or you can leave the bag there. So it's according to your choice, according to your wish, according to your option. So this is voluntary action. So our body muscles, whether it is taken to the bag or not, that you have to decide. You have to give permission to your hand to hold it or take it away. So then this kind of actions we can call by the term voluntary actions. Okay, so you can see the brain, your brain sends electrical impulse to the effectors muscles, ordering them to contract, so you could pick the bag up. Okay, so your brain sends electrical impulses to the effector muscles, right? So here the information goes to the effector muscles and ordering them to contract, so you could pick the bag up. So voluntary actions are slower than involuntary actions, and they start at the brain. Okay, so involuntary action we have seen it start at the sense organ and the heading or leading to the effector muscles, but voluntary actions are start at the brain. From the brain, the information sends through the motor neuron to the effector. The voluntary actions are slower than the involuntary actions. As I told you just ago, the involuntary actions are very, very fast and a very quick action, but rather than the voluntary actions are revision from the topic that we have studied, the control and coordination and a response topic. Okay, so let's see the past paper revision, second part. See the question, which actions straighten the arm at the elbow joint? So what is the answer for this question? Which actions straighten the arm at the elbow joint? Biceps contract. So when we keep that elbow straightened, what will happen? Straightened means both relaxes No, okay. So biceps relaxes and triceps contracts, we can say. Okay, students. Okay, let's see the next question now. Which response is a result of geotropism? Geotropism means the example is the root growing towards the earth. Okay, we have studied, and flowers being produced now, growing a bigger leaves, no, seeds germinating, no, roots growing downwards is the geotropism, right? We know very well that answer. Everybody knows geotropism and a phototropism. We have already seen these things, right? Phototropism, again I am saying, let me say the definition for the word, the phototropism and a geotropism. Phototropism, it is a plant growing towards the light. So the shoot of the plants can grow towards the light. At the same time, the roots are always growing towards the earth, so towards the gravity, so that we can say geotropism. So the positive geotropism and a negative phototropism, that is the root, okay, because it is growing towards or opposite direction of the light and towards the direction of the gravity. But at the same time, when you see the phototropism, it's a positive phototropism and a negative geotropism. Okay, it is growing towards the light, not towards earth. See the next question now. The diagram shows a part of the human circulatory system. In which vessel do the breakdown products of hormones first appear? A or B or C or D? What is the answer? A liver. Okay, it plays a major role in production of the breakdown of hormones. Mainly happens in the liver only. Okay, yeah, good. So the next question, which target organ releases glucose into the bloodstream as a result of action of an adrenaline? Okay, so glucose is generally released by adrenal gland. No, adrenal gland is releasing adrenaline hormone. Kidney? No. Pancreas? No. So the answer we can say liver always releasing, okay, because it's the process happening in the liver only. Okay, pancreas is just secreting the insulin and a glucagon. So insulin, glucagon both comes to the liver and changes the glucose into glycogen and glycogen into glucose. So for this question also, the answer is the liver. So which responses are shown by the shoot of a plant? Geotropism, phototropism. Which responses are shown by the shoot of the plant? Shoot of the plant always phototropism. So phototropism is plus, geotropism is minus. So we can say B is the answer, exact answer. You understand, students, clearly? I hope you understand easily, right? So reflex action again is given here, you see. So the diagram shows a simple reflex arc. Sensory neuron activated, number 3, muscle stimulated, number 4, receptor stimulated, knee taped here, okay, and motor neuron activated. So this is, we have to see what is the correct order of events after the knee taped. Knee taped means the knee is hit by something. So the impulse is taken through the sensory neuron. First receptor, okay. Receptor is stimulated, number 4. Then this is taken, sensory neuron activated. Next 4 to 2. The 2 again takes the impulse to the relay neuron. Relay neuron passes the response to the motor neuron 1. Okay. And muscle stimulated 3. So 4, 2, 1, 3. Where is 4, 2, 1, 3? Let us see the answer. Yeah, answer is 4, 2, 1, 3 is the correct answer. You understand the sequence of this reflex arc, okay? So you can understand, okay, one by one. And there are a lot of questions given here. If you go through all the questions, you can understand very clearly and easily. So which responses occur when a person is too hot too hot, sweating is increased, right? Sweat produced, yes. So answer may be either C or D. Shivering, no. Okay, so both no is given. So blood vessels supplying skin capillaries dilated, right? So dilated means it becomes a big size. So S, no, dilated. This is the answer. D is an answer. Okay, D is an answer. What's the next question? The diagram shows the shoot of a seedling fixed to a rotating platform that is being lit from one side only. So the platform was allowed to rotate for 2 days. Then it was left stationary for a further 2 days. Which diagram shows the appearance of the seedling after the 4-day period? So we can say the answer is the D, okay, right, because it grows towards the light direction, okay. Light is the left side, right? So you can see the left side light is there. So it moves, that's light direction, that is, okay. So this is what we can say, the growth of a plant, phototropism, okay. So let's see the next question. The diagram shows some blood vessels near the surface of the skin. So skin surface, the blood vessel, blood flow, X, Y and Z. So if vasoconstriction occurs at X, okay, vasoconstriction occurs, what happens to the blood flow at Y and Z? So Y and Z, the blood flow will be very less, right? It decreases, we can say, because constriction means it becomes the lumen becomes very less and the width of the diameter becomes very diameter is decreasing, so that the less quantity of blood is flowing, okay. So Y is also decreases and Z is also decreases. Let's see the next question. So the diagram shows seedlings in 2 experiments on the topic response of seedlings to gravity and light. So experiment 1, to show the light activity, shoot is given and a start of experiment in the dark and a shoot is there 3 days later. And experiment 2, to show the effect of light, shoot and a start of experiment, shoot and 3 days later and a light from one side. So how have the seedlings responded? How have the seedlings responded? Okay. So to gravity or to light, A, B, C, D. Okay. So it's given here to gravity or to light. So yes, both. Okay. So for gravity, it is growing, and the shoot part, both part is growing. So that we can say both are given tick mark. Okay. Okay, students, let's see the next question. How does sweating cool the body? Sweating causes vasodilation. Yes, correct. Sweating decreases the water content of the blood. No. Urea and salt are lost from the body in sweat. Water in sweat evaporates from the skin. So water in sweat evaporates from the skin. Okay. So then the body gets cooling. That is the main thing. Okay. So water in sweat evaporates from the skin, so that the body gets cooling and a constant body temperature is maintaining. Let's see the next question. At night, a man looks at the stars and then begins to read a map using a bright lamp. So look at the map is close and bright light, okay, and how do the shape of the lens and size of the people. So bright light means the pupil size becomes to decrease or smaller, okay, and the lens is fatter because it's a close object, right? So fatter and smaller, B may be the answer, right? Let's see. Yeah, B is the correct answer. Okay, students, don't forget, okay, these things. So next question. What is the main function of sweating? To excrete urea, to remove excess salts, to clean the pores, to cool the body. Yes, to cool the body. Okay, always don't forget this is the correct answer. So let's see the next question. The diagram shows the eye of a person in a bright lit room. Okay, so bright lit room. What happens to distance F and distance G? Okay, so distance G is the pupil size, distance F is the radial muscle. Okay, so what happens when in the bright room radial muscle relaxes? Okay, so radial muscle becomes larger, okay, and the diameter of G becomes smaller. So G becomes smaller, larger. A may be the answer. Sorry, sorry. F is smaller. How? F will not be smaller. It is the wrong answer, okay, and G is not become larger because it is a bright room, right? Brightly lit room means people size becomes this is wrong answer given, students. So the exact answer is A is the correct answer. The distance F, it becomes larger, okay, it becomes relaxes, and G, the people size becomes small and becomes smaller. So A is the correct answer. Please correct it. A body accidentally touches a very hot object and immediately takes his hand away. This reflex action. What is the effector? The effector, what is the effector? A heat receptor is in hand, no motor neuron, muscle is in. So muscle in his arm. Okay. So generally effector means only two parts we have mentioned you. Muscles and glands. Okay. Muscles and glands. So here muscle is given. So we can give the answer a muscle in his arm. A man injures his arm in an accident. Afterwards, he can feel objects touching his hand, but he cannot move his hand away from them. What could cause this? So a man injures his arm in an accident. Afterwards, he can feel objects touching his hand, but cannot move his hand away from them. Okay. So receptor is there, but receptor is functioning in the hand, but the hand is not able to moving. Okay. Let's see. The answer is the C. You can see the nerve connection is cut only between his central nervous system and effectors in his arm. Okay. So the nerve connection is cut only between his central nervous system and the effectors in his arm. Okay, but motor neuron is cut and sensory neuron is present in his arm. During a long race, an athlete's skin temperature rises. What causes this increased sweating? Opening of the pores in the skin, vasoconstriction, no, vasodilation of the blood vessels in the skin. So vasodilation, more blood supply will be there. Okay, so vasodilation. When the body temperature rises above 37 degrees C, which changes help to return the temperature to normal? Activity of sweat glands, blood vessels, and near skin. The answer is activity of sweat glands increased and blood vessels near skin surface. It's dilated. Okay, it is dilated. The diagram shows a section through a pair of eye, eggs, iris, pupil, and a lens. So X is a circular muscle. And what effect does it have when it contracts? Reduces the pull of the lens, increasing the curvature. Okay, so reduces the pull of the lens and the lens reduces its curvature. So read the following sentences. In order to prevent the human body from losing heat, the arterioles supplying the skin become narrow. Which process does this sentence describe? Constriction, shivering, sweating, vasodilation. So constriction, okay. So answer is the constriction. Is the correct answer. So next question, 46. During a long distance race, the body temperature of athlete begins to rise. Sweating increases, right? And blood vessels in the skin is dilated. Same question, I think, repeated. D is an answer. The diagram shows a section through a human eye. Which label part prevents the internal reflection of light in the eye? We know very well which part the internal reflection of light. The answer is the choroid. Okay, the choroid layer is there. So it is controlling, okay, internal reflection of light. That is the meaning. Light intensity is controlled by iris. Okay, internal control. They are asking prevents the internal reflection of light. Okay, in the eye. The diagram shows the bones and muscles of the upper arm. What must happen for the bones in the lower arm to move the direction of the arrow? So muscle contracts and muscle Y contracts, muscle X contracts and muscle Y relaxes. Muscle X relaxes, Y relaxes, and what happens here? Muscle X contracts, okay, biceps muscles contracts and triceps muscles relaxes. The graph shows the variation in a person's body temperature over a period of time, and which temperature change is likely to cause more sweating. So increase body temperature, the first part, and middle part is normal body temperature. So decrease. So decrease in body temperature, A is not there, and so normal body temperature also no sweating. Increase in body temperature only sweating will be there. C is decreasing, okay. So maybe answer is the B is the correct answer. Yes, increasing temperature, the sweating will occur, okay. Let's see the last question. The diagram shows a germinated bean seed with a horizontal radicle. So this is placed on a slowly rotating disc and is left for 3 days. So which diagram shows the appearance of the radicle after 3 days? Okay, electric motor is given here. Slowly rotating disc is there. Okay, so how radicle and bean seed is there, and which direction it will change after 3 days? You can see C only. Okay, it moves towards like that. Okay, students, I hope you understand clearly about all these 25 questions today. Revise well these questions. We can meet in the next class with a new past paper. One more revision we will see, and we can go to the next new lesson, the reproduction, human reproduction. Okay, students, we can meet in the next class. Till then, bye. Take care.